and Makers podcast brings the community to you. We talk to small business owners about work, life, and everything in between. Subscribe to Sellers and Makers podcast so you never miss an episode. Hi, and welcome to Sellers and Makers podcast, a place artisans can come together in community. Brought to you by Everything Embroidery Market. I'm your host, Hope Dale, and today we are speaking with the one and only Lisa Shaw. Lisa, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm just fine, but I know you're reaching new people today, so I should probably introduce myself. My name is Lisa Shaw, and I've been doing machine embroidery for over 25, almost 30 years now. So I work mostly with the Embrilliance software, but I've been started out as a home hobbyist, bought my first embroidery machine back in the early 90s. So there's a whole bunch of education that goes along with that. So I'd love to share my experience going through because I've done it all. Well, I haven't, not well, but I have tried pretty much everything as far as having my own business or doing things just for family, teaching software. So we come from all different over here.
Well, that's why everybody comes to all of your classes, because you've done it all. So you have the experience behind you to say, I've tried this and it didn't work. Or then I tried this and it did work.
Exactly.
Yeah. So jumping right in, something we were talking about before is so you've bought this new machine, you're ready to rock, but then you're overwhelmed with software choices. Do you just go with what the machine has? Do you buy new software? Where do you even start?
Well, I see this all the time on social media. One buys a brand new machine and they have a purpose in mind. Why did you get your embroidery machine? And the answer to that question really should sort of dictate where you head on from. Because if you just got it for fun and start embellishing things, well, just jump in. Start stitching. You're used to your machine. I usually like to tell people to hold off on your software at least until you have a couple stitch outs done, because you don't know what exactly that you need. There's software falls into two categories. You have customizing software and you have digitizing software, and they're vastly different. And the learning curve on either one of them is huge. So when I say customizing software, that means with designs that someone else has already digitized and changing them up. Now that's simple as adding a name, resizing, changing colors, combining designs in your hoop so you have more than one in your hoop. Do color sorting so that you don't have to change the needle on your, not the needle, the thread machine over and over again. Yeah. Those are customizing functions. And to jump right in with customizing software, well, that's not really that huge of a step. However, I do recommend doing some of the built-in designs that came on the machine and working with designs from reputable sources. And what I mean by reputable source, someone that's been around for a while, a company that maybe offers you a sample design to try out. Because if they have live stitch outs, not live, but actual stitch outs on, you know that they've stitched it successfully. So when you're learning your machine, there's so much that goes into the machine. What stabilizer, what hooping technique, how to hoop to use, how to thread your machine properly. These are all things that you're going to have to troubleshoot from day one, because if your design doesn't look exactly as what theirs looks like, something happened. Machine embroidery is a big science experiment. It's repeatable. You should put this design in and be able to stitch it 5,000 times, and it's going to come out the exact way for 5,000 times. The design doesn't change, but something changes at the machine. Maybe your needle wears out, and yes, they do. It's just like getting an oil change in your car.
It does
using the right stabilizer for your fabric. different hooping techniques. You have to learn all that stuff first. I'm sure, anyone that's done it, you've had that pile of, ooh, what on earth
Oh,
happened to this?
absolutely.
And you have to know shoot that. So learning how to use your mind first, now you're not having, you know how to troubleshoot those things. So when you start customizing and something happens at the machine, you can troubleshoot with the machine stuff, but maybe it's something you did in the software. Maybe you took an 8x8 design and shrunk it down to 4x4, because why not? Software lets you, but you know that that's not a machine issue. You now know, oh, I need to check out my software and figure out what troubleshooting that goes.
Right.
Customizing software, you're working with someone else's designs. Someone else has done the testos. They've stitched it out. It's been successful. You get to play. You get to have some fun.
Mhm.
You get to do some challenging things. With digitizing software, that's where a lot of people say, oh, I want to take this image
Yeah,
and create an embroidery design
it's a
machine.
whole different
Well,
beast.
completely, because you have to understand what went into creating those designs in the first place. And that's where all those techie terms come from, like underlay and pull compensation and push and distortion. You have to know what all that is. And if you haven't well stitching designs, someone tested, and you've
Mhm.
done the troubleshooting at the machine, if you stitch those, you don't have that knowledge base from. So it's not impossible. That's where I started 30 years ago. We had no customizing here. All we had an embroidery machine. We didn't have USB. That's how long ago this was. You did a lot of websites didn't exist. The internet didn't exist. Where am I coming from?
Yeah, you couldn't go on Etsy and download a file.
Absolutely not. It didn't exist. You had to create it yourself. And creating it yourself, we didn't have pictures. We didn't have an internet to look at. There was no YouTube. So I have piles of testos that digitizing and creating my own design from scratch, and it was just horrible. And by the time one design in particular, and I always talk about this in my classes, I had this chicken. I was going to decorate my entire kitchen with it. It was going to go on the curtains, on the placemats. It matched the china, whatever. It was going to be on everything. And by the time I finished digitizing that chicken, I never wanted to see it again. So of course it wasn't going to decorate my kitchen. I have one stitch out of it left. I have nightmares about that design. It was horrible.
Oh gosh, that's so good. The chicken. No, I mean, I
The
feel
chicken
like
from
that
hell. I just
yeah. Sorry. It's delayed a little, and I didn't know if you were still talking or not. But yeah, no, I feel like everybody has that, especially when they're starting out something new, like whether it's digitizing anything or even like a recipe in the kitchen, or it's like they have that one thing they were trying to get, they were so excited about, and then by the end of it, they're like, never again. No more chickens.
yes, that's but I understand exactly how you feel. And the thing of it
Yeah.
is that this is technology. So we kind of think that the software does all the work, and we forget that we have to be a little bit creative in it. I mean, that's
Mhm.
what goes into very beautiful designs, creativity. And we have
Right.
to know how to use the tools to make that creativity happen. So
Right.
it's the nuts and bolts of machine embroidery.
So, do you think so I know you say don't get overwhelmed by the software when you first get your new machine, but do you think how long do you think someone should have their machine and get acquainted before maybe they start dabbling in the digitizing or start thinking about it?
Well, everybody learns differently. If you are a computer person and you're not afraid to push buttons, you have a shorter time. If you're getting
Mhm.
successful stitch outs on your machine and you know how to troubleshoot it and software is okay with you, knock your socks off. Go dive in.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to start pushing buttons and doing the tests and starting from ground zero. I meet a lot of people that come in from the vinyl world or from the scan and cut and the silhouette and creating uh, heat transfer things. And
Yeah.
they're thinking, oh, that embroidery should be just as easy. And
Mhm.
well, it's not. There's so much more because if you from someone coming from the cutting industry or how you cut something, you could start up here,
Yeah.
then it can come back down, rolls back and forth, and it cuts. This result is the same. But with
The same.
digitizing,
Yeah.
if you digitize something up here and then down here and then down here and then in here, it looks like a chaotic squirrel on LSD created this thing, and you have strings all over the place, and your machine's making knots, and you're like,
Yeah.
ah. So you have to have some. You have to think like the embroidery machine. How is it going to create
Yeah.
these stitches and get from one point to another? So getting your experience level, it's good to have background information, but it
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's gonna make your journey any less
Any
than
easier.
anybody
Yeah.
else's.
Okay.
But
That's
everybody
interesting.
learns differently.
And I never really thought about it in the sense of like someone coming from like a scan and cut or some sort of cutting. I mean, it's very different. I mean,
Mhm.
something cut is going to look cut no matter how, it's going to come out the same, but all the stitches, I mean, that's
Yeah.
a
And it's actually
very
for someone
very
with
detailed.
and for someone coming from graphic arts background, they even have more trouble because they're used to working in layers. And you can
Mhm.
have a layer of black and put a layer of red on top of it with a
Right.
skinny outline and it looks great. But in
Yeah.
embroidery, if you want a black outline around your red apple, you don't put a big black fill first. And the
Right.
software doesn't just punch holes in things because holes don't make sense in embroidery. If you cut a hole in embroidery, those this is the theory that you learn by
Mhm.
watching things stitch out. Your designs actually shrink up. If you look at your lettering in your software
Mhm.
and you made it 100% size and then you looked at the actual stitch out, you'll see that it's skinnier. And that's because stitches have pull.
Yeah.
So you're like, wow, I digitized this lettering. It looked nice and fat in my software, and I stitched on my towel, and it's all shrunken up, but I can't see anything. That's the life of a digitizer. You live for
Yeah.
your test sews. You have to study your test sew and then distort what's in your software so that your stitch out looks like what you expect.
Right. A lot of
Sometimes you'll
trial
look
and
at your
error.
software and everything looks muddy, and graphic people expect what you see is what you get. Well, sometimes
Mhm.
muddy stitches beautifully.
Yeah. Okay, a lot of just trial and error to see what works with each uh, stitch out. I
Right.
mean, that's really interesting. Um, okay, so now we're not getting overwhelmed by our software, and we're getting used to our machines.
Mhm.
Um, you had said you had spoken with a lot of mothers or people starting up these side hustles. Um, what kind of trends are you seeing with that? Like, are they just working with schools? Or are they just trying to start small and build it up? Or what you said you helped them. I guess I'm trying to figure out how you're doing that
Where did it
exactly.
go? Well, a lot of us bought an embroidery machine to make money. We
Right.
want to, and maybe we have kids at home. I don't have
Mhm.
kids at home, but you want to put your machine to work. Maybe
Right.
you want to do craft fairs, something. So decide what is your goal.
Mhm.
I have a few friends that are really big. They have boys and they are into sports. Those clubs, those little baseball clubs, the soccer clubs, the a golf frisbee, those are gold mines for
Oh, yeah.
embroiderers. And
Oh,
what
yeah.
I mean is that mom wants to have a shirt that says Bulldog Mom on it and in the
Yeah.
team
Number
colors. They
28.
just have to have it.
Yeah.
That's and
Absolutely.
all you have to do is wear one
Mhm.
to a game, and everyone's gonna say, "Where'd you get that?" One of my
Exactly.
friends, that's what she started, the Bulldogs. She does Bulldog Mom, and she started out with she did sweatshirts, and then she says, "Well, sweatshirts are hard, and it's not something I can get instant cash." So, she
Mhm.
made key fobs that said Bulldog Mom on them. And she had one hanging and she says, I can do t-shirt or sweatshirts and they were like $40 because hers are nice and beefy and you got it.
Mhm.
She's run businesses before because we'll circle around that to that a minute. I want to get into the marketing
Okay.
first because how do you get the customers is is a big thing.
Yeah.
And wearing your embroidery, that's it. So she
Mhm.
had she did the key and she did Christmas ornaments and everything because in the hoop is real big. And while her kids are doing stuff, she's either making plans on what the next thing is that she's going to do, or she's stitching something at home. She's like, if by the time I'm done with this, if I never have purple and silver thread gray in my house again, it will probably be good.
Yeah.
Just the kids got to get on a different team. These colors are driving me nuts.
Yeah.
So,
We need some
but
variety
that's how she
here.
got her marketing. Yeah, exactly. Um, Now, charging for these things, that's where a lot of the stumbling block comes from. Because if you go to Walmart and you buy your sweatshirt and it's $20 and you put embroidery on it, how do you figure out charge for that? So
Yeah.
I'm not an expert math because it really depends on time that goes into it. It's not just the
Right.
item. You can't just say, "Oh, it's $5 to add on to it. There it is, $25." I mean, what if you
Yeah.
should contact wholesale companies so that you get or a company that will
Mhm.
sell you wholesale and have a conversation with them even if you're not huge. If you're going to be reselling, you should get your items good quality, consistent quality, and is the consistent colors. Dye lots are important.
Right.
So if you're constantly ordering from the company, they don't have one-offs. They might, but
Yeah.
that's a special, and then you do a one-off special. You said when it's gone,
Mhm.
it's gone. They're never getting this green in again, so we got to have it. But it's a consistent quality and you have to work out your prices. What is your time worth? For me to embroider I only do gifts now because I have a hard time charging what my time is worth. So they're getting a gift from me. That's how I do it. But you have to decide. That's why it's better when I was doing it in business, I only sold items that I sourced because I did buy them at wholesale.
Right.
I could double the price to get the retail cost of it. So I was making money that way. And I was able to add the embroidery time onto it. If they brought me something, I didn't charge any less. In fact, I charged more. And the reason was because if it went bad, I'd have to replace it and they'd have to replace it. And I didn't want to oopsies happen.
Right.
But I wasn't making I couldn't just add $5 onto their sweatshirt.
Right.
I was making no profit. I was doing the same amount of work and not making the same amount of money as I was if I sourced the sweatshirt. So that's why I charged more.
Makes
So,
total sense. And it's also like, is it something that's already been created? If it's just a sweatshirt that says Bulldog Mom, but then there's no personalization, like that would add to the price of it. If you're putting a number 28 on there
right.
along with the Bulldog Mom or a name or, all of those things drive your price up, which I feel like,
Mhm.
especially in this industry, people feel bad charging the price that they should charge, like for their time,
Right.
and it's hard to quantify that because you
Mhm.
think, maybe you don't think of as much of your time as you should.
It's a female
It's
thing.
totally a female thing. Men don't have a problem with
You
that.
know, we
I'm generalizing, but I feel like men have 0 problem saying, like, "My time is worth X amount, and
Mhm.
people respect him for it. And women are like, I don't know.
Exactly. Now when she says saying when she mentioned to me, "I'm getting tired of the purple and the
Mhm.
gray," I said, "Well, why don't you walk around to the other
Yeah,
side of the team
exactly.
and hook up with them?" And that's exactly what she did.
Mhm.
So she's like, "Well, now I gotta work for the competitors." I said, "Yeah, but you're
Yeah, but
making
you're
money
making
now."
mon you could even charge more. No, not that you would, but
Exactly.
but yeah, no, I think ballparks, any of that, any of the kids' sports things, first of all, every mom wants
Mhm.
their bags, like their kids' stuff monogrammed so they don't lose it or it doesn't get switched
Right.
up with some other kids because that's not
Mhm.
cheap. And then, all the
Right.
moms want all the gear. So I mean,
Mhm.
it's the way to go. I've seen several women that have started that way. They started, at the
Mhm.
ballpark, at the soccer field, and that alone did a ton. And it was not even like then people started coming to him, "Well, I want, this as a gift. Can you get bags? Can you do this?" And the
Mhm.
girl was like, "Absolutely." So then, she expanded,
Mhm.
but she expanded based on a customer saying something they wanted and had pre-orders. So it was like a
Mhm.
no-brainer, really. But
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like that is key.
Now, one thing you have to remember. Uh-oh. I lost my screen. One thing to keep in mind, if you get into the sporting goods, you have to not mind doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
Okay? It's now I'm a onesie type of girl. So I do one thing and then I'm done.
It's not like
One
a
of the
chicken.
things, yeah, no more chicken. So when I was talking to someone who was similar with mine, that mentality. She's like, "Well, I like to make money, but I don't like sports. I have no kids." I said, "Ah, but your husband's in real estate and you stage homes, don't you?"
Right.
Because they do. And what she started doing was unique embroidered pillows for a specific room in a house that was high end. Now we're in Colorado, so the Western theme is huge.
Mhm.
It's it's big. I'm sure in Texas it is too.
Yeah, we're very familiar with the Western theme here.
Well, what her forte was embroidering on leather. So she
Oh,
had she had friends that were a butcher, so she ended up with cowhides on stuff, and she would just do generic embroidery on cowhide pillows, and you have a whomping big pillow on the couch, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome. Can I have that pillow?" And of
yeah,
course, when they got comment came, it became a gift from the real estate agent. She got
right.
paid by her husband, who because he was
Mhm.
the agent for it. But it also got her into other agent homes.
Right.
So she started doing high-end embroidery for homes. And we're not
Yeah.
talking, we're not the $50,000 homes, if those
Yeah,
even still exist. We're
I don't
talking
think
more expensive homes.
yeah. Well,
So,
those are all well, you also have to think about the people that have the disposable income to buy the pillow or you have
mhm,
to think about your target market. Like, who has the extra money to spend on that? Whether
right.
it's a baseball mom shirt or it's this custom leather pillow. I mean,
Mhm,
those may be the same people, it might be different people. And
exactly.
so, you have to think about all of those different demographics as well when you're thinking about what you're selling and who you're selling to. I mean, it's basics, but I feel like especially people starting out in this industry and trying to grow a business that they sometimes they forget about those little things that are actually big things. But,
Right.
you know, it's it's all really interesting and it's interesting to hear what people do. And like I was thinking like, oh, they could have done like custom hand towels for the bathrooms in the kitchen or
Mhm,
something like that.
mhm.
But a leather custom pillow, like It's incredible. That's awesome. That is so cool. Like, I
Yeah.
want one. Not I don't know that I can afford
Yeah,
one,
and
but I
at
want
350
one.
a piece, that was
Yeah.
she was making good money because it was a
Yeah.
one of a kind thing. They were never gonna
Yeah.
have anything like that.
And then people want one of a kind. I mean,
Mhm.
that's what this is.
And she got lots of repeat orders because on every it always when you give something or you have something on display,
Mhm.
she had business cards right
Yeah,
next to it, right on that coffee table, and business
absolutely.
cards. She'd have to end up every time they had an open house, boom, all those business cards left.
I'm
So,
sure she got a ton of
it's
people from the open house and the business cards. That's
mhm.
that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Very
it was a
interesting.
neat marketing.
Yes. That is neat. And I know we've talked about that like in at Everything Embroidery Market when we do our vendor panel. We've talked about different
Mhm.
ways and different markets and all of that. But I don't think I've heard that one, the leather pillow one. That one's cool. Um,
No. But it was very attractive to me because that's the type that I'd want to get into. I don't want to do
right,
mass production. I did the
right.
craft shows, and when you do craft shows, you're taking a risk.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to know what is hot, what is in season, and you have to be a shopper. And I don't shop.
Right,
I go to the trade shows, but I'm not in the stores. I don't see what is trendy. So for me doing craft shows to see what was the right colors and the right styles, it didn't pay off for me.
right. And craft shows, I mean, I feel like they're very risky because you want to have a finished product and
Mhm.
you're just praying that people like this finished product that you've put so much time and effort in, but it's not sold before that. But then
Right.
there's some people that are incredible and they can do like we have classes on it. Like, you
Mhm.
know, all the things that you can do with a small hoop and, you know, setting
Mhm.
up for craft shows. And some people are just absolutely wonderful with it. And then
Absolutely.
there's some people like I don't think I'd want to do a craft show. I It would make me nervous. Like I put too much time in this. It'd be like, you know, like showing people my kid, like, look, I crafted this. Don't you like him? Like, these are my things. But,
Well, it does take
you
a
know,
special personality to do craft shows too.
right, right. And there's so many that are wonderful at it. I think it would give me anxiety. But then there's other things that are there's so many different avenues in this industry. And if you're starting,
Mhm.
that, you know, and just because you think, oh well, I want to go the craft show route, and then you do it a couple times, doesn't mean you can't go the other way
You can't
or go
pivot.
to
You
your
can always pivot.
yeah, you can always pivot to your kids' ball game,
Mhm.
or if you are awesome and can do leather pillows. I mean, everybody's awesome, but
Yes.
I really want one of those pillows now.
Talk about risky leather pillows. That I would be
I
like
know.
holding my breath
I know.
watching that
Like
stitch.
if I mess this one up, this isn't
Mhm.
but you
Now
know,
I'll say she also embroiders lampshades. She's got the skill of taking apart does the silk and recreates the lampshade. That's like way over my skill level. She does beautiful work, so
I would be did she do it by hand? Like, I don't know, on a lampshade, I would feel like you'd have to almost do it on hand, like, by hand.
Oh, no, she embroiders the fabric first and then stretches it to fit on the lampshade. She knows how to make lampshades.
Well, that's neat. Does she do
It
it
is.
with leather too? I've seen some, like, Western, like, you know, they have, like I don't know, I feel like it could be really cool, but I don't know that it would really work with a lampshade. Never
It'd be
mind,
very
just
dark.
it would be very dark. It would be a very moody room. Just disregard everything I just said. This is really dumb. My coffee hasn't kicked in today. I was going with for this leather thing, you say lampshade, just took it off there.
She works with leather and silk, so she's
Yeah,
on both ends of this spectrum. but
Yeah,
both
a
very
really
difficult materials to work with.
yeah,
But she figured out
exactly.
her niche, because that's the other thing. You have to figure out what it is you
Right.
want to and what you're good at. No,
Mhm.
not everybody's good at embroidering on leather or silk. It's
No.
or Richardson hats.
Yeah, no, you have to find your niche, and I feel like that's all of it. Like, that's the craft show, that's, your
Mhm,
sports paraphernalia, that's your leather pillows and lampshades, like, everybody has a niche, and you can't do all of it.
mm-mm.
I mean
You could
I guess
try.
you could try, but, like, I don't think you do very well doing all of it all the time. It would be too much,
No.
or at least for one person. But, I think that's the thing too, finding your niche
Mhm.
and where are you gonna make your money and make it make sense, like, to your life.
Right.
Like, do you like, for her to do the leather pillows, it made a lot of sense because
Mhm,
her husband was already a real estate agent, and that just
mhm,
naturally was part of her life. For the mom that was already at the ball games, it
mhm.
made sense. To the lady that likes going to the craft shows anyway, that makes sense. I mean, it's I think that's the wonderful part of this industry and getting into it. You can
Mhm.
make it a part of your life that makes sense. I'm already at the
Right.
ballpark. I'm already going to these open houses. I think that's something that people maybe don't realize right away, but or that are starting to think about it. It's like you can make it make sense with your life and
You gotta find your
make it
niche.
all work. Right. Definitely. And your niche, you might already be, at the ballpark or at, wherever you might
It
be.
just fits right in. I mean, that's just,
Right.
and even if your
Exactly.
kid's not in sports, he goes to school. So,
Right.
he could be on the
Right. It
chess
could
club
be,
or.
yeah, it could be, monogram school jackets.
Mhm.
Again, because you don't want to pay for that twice in 1 year because you lost your jacket. I say that because my mom had to do that a couple times for me.
Oops.
Not because my kids lose their stuff. It's because I did.
Well, I went to Catholic school. We had no monogramming. It was your uniform, so.
Well, our uniforms could be monogram. Like only jackets or sweaters could have a monogram on it, but it had to be
Ah.
specific. So, yeah, my kids typically don't lose things. That was just me. Um, anyway, I think, okay, now this is just a fun question. And
Uh-oh.
I think that you're the perfect person to answer it. Okay. So, one thing in this industry that you wish people would stop doing
Oh god.
that gets on your nerves.
1, huh?
It could be 3. I'm here for it, whatever you want.
Well well, first on the topic that we just came from, I wish people would stop underselling their worth, okay? I really wish that
Amen,
people would
sister.
would take a step back,
Yeah.
take inventory of everything that goes into what we do, and be able to put value on it and
Mhm,
understand it isn't just pushing a button. You did something, you created it, it has value, and it's beautiful. And
mhm,
don't we are our own worst enemies. Oh my gosh, we are our biggest critics because we are the ones that look at our embroidery from this close up with our reading glasses on to find the problems. No one else does. that is we are the only ones that do that. When we give a gift to someone or we make something for someone, if you did it properly, they are thrilled beyond belief. I wish people would stop degrading themselves. The other thing I wish people would stop doing is trying to go the cheap way. Okay. If you bought $4,000 embroidery machine, you do not need to be using paper stabilizer or typing paper. I just wish that would stop. And not going to harm your machine. What is your output?
Right.
Just stick it in the wash machine and wash it twice, and you'll see it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's so use the. Yes, we're practicing. Yes, we're learning. Yes, this is not a cheap hobby. If you thought this was, you maybe take up pencil drawing, and even then, if you take up drawing, you know that if you go the right way, you end up buying all the stuff. Trust me, I have
It's a
piles.
slippery slope.
It
Slippery
is.
slope.
It is, but you can't test things if you don't test it on the materials that you're going to use in the finished product. So that's always a, you're not testing anything if the only thing you're testing if you're stitching on felt is how the design stitches on felt. So if you're trying to get something you're having problems stitching on, well, go to Goodwill, go to the thrift store, find worn out t-shirts in your house and stitch on those and use them as dust rags afterwards. Learn on the per materials so that when you're finishing something, when you're doing the real thing, you have success. You know what it is that you want. You know what it is that you have to do to get the proper result.
Perfectly
So that was
said.
2 things.
Well, like both of them are very important. You do need to know
Yeah.
your worth and, sell your goods for what they should be sold for. Not be
Mhm.
afraid of it. And
Yep.
I love the idea of going to Goodwill or using your old t-shirts or whatever you're
Mhm.
sewing on that's similar, doing that.
Mhm.
That's a really good idea. I've never thought of that. That's
Yeah.
that's,
Though
that's a
some that
good
well, then
tip.
it's all worn out and it's really flimsy. What's that?
I was saying that's a hot tip to,
Oh, yes.
to tell
And
people. I never thought about
someone
that
made
before.
the t-shirts are all real flimsy and whatnot. I said, well, you're just feeling the fabric. So the time you go to
Mhm.
Walmart and you buy tissue knit, you've stitched on a really warm t-shirt and you know how to get that the result. So, but the
Right.
Goodwill, I used to ravage Goodwill. I knew I had a great relationship with the manager, and they'd call me, oh, we're having a 25-cent Thursday. So anything in this barrel was 25 cents. Hey, if it doesn't fit its fabric.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome. That's an awesome thing. Okay. Well, so what are the next things that you have coming up?
well, I'm always teaching. I'm always teaching.
Always
I love
teaching.
sharing information. You'll find me on my Facebook page, So Bubbles, Bubbles Menagerie. That's my Facebook business page. Every Tuesday, I do a broadcast, 6 o'clock Colorado time, and I teach in Brilliance software. So if you're trying to get education about Brilliance, check me out on Tuesdays. If you're not on book, I do have all of my education listed on my website. So my website is sew-bubbles.com, and that's sew, S-E-W hyphen bubbles.com. And if you click on the education link, you will find out where I am. I'm either at a trade show like the Everything Embroidery Market, or coming up in July, I'm at Applique Getaway, or I
Mhm.
also do boot camps, in Brilliance boot camps. So we do 3 days, hands-on classes, 1 day for each software program, and there's nobody else there, just me and you. And I do them in various locations around the country. I have Nashville coming up the first weekend in June. And this is 2023. So if you're watching the replay of this, check out my website to figure out where I'm going to be in the future. But I will also have a boot camp in Phoenix and Seattle in September. So I'm doing 2 locations. I also have
Wonderful.
online learning. All the information's on my website, sew-bubbles.com.
We will also put the website in the notes of the podcast if you need to go back to there to check it out. Well, thank you so much for coming on with us today. Follow us at Everything Embroidery Market on Facebook and Instagram for all of our latest updates. We will see you next week.